Hello everyone, welcome today. My name is Mwalimu Kenywa Juguna. Our topic today, our subject today is social studies. Topic, climatic regions in Africa. Africa experiences different climatic conditions. This is because part of our continent lies at different latitudes. As you know, latitudes are imaginary lines that run from north to south and help us to locate places. So Africa is divided into 6 major climatic zones. Africa is divided into 6 major climatic zones. Our first climatic zone is going to be the equatorial climate. Equatorial climate. So when we talk about equatorial climate, we are referring to the climate that is experienced between the 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south latitude. So we are referring to the climate. This is where we have the equator, 0 degrees. And so this climate that we are talking about, the zone that we are referring to, is between the 5 degrees north and the 5 degrees south. So we are referring to this climate here that is experienced in this region. As the lesson proceeds, we are going to look at the areas, or in other words, the locations that experience this climate. So we are going to start with discussing the characteristics of this equatorial climatic zone. Our first characteristic is that it is hot and wet. It is hot and wet throughout. It is hot and wet throughout the year. That is our first characteristic. Number 2, the temperature is high. Temperature is high throughout the year. Temperature is high throughout the year. This is because of the overhead sun. So high temperature. High temperature throughout the year. So therefore, in using a graphical representation, this side we have the amount of rainfall. Here we have months of the year. On this side, we have the temperature in degrees Celsius. So when we say that the temperature, the equatorial climate has hot and is hot and wet throughout the year, what are you referring to? From the month of January all the way to December, you find that all the months of the year we record rainfall. On this side, we have the amount of rainfall. So here we are representing the amount of rainfall that is experienced from January to December. As you can see from our graph, that from January to December, this region here experienced rainfall. So we can say it is wet throughout the year. Then, when you look at the temperature curve here, this is our temperature curve. We have from 0 degrees Celsius there all the way to around 27 degrees Celsius. So, in our temperature curve, this is our temperature curve, you can see that all the months of the year experienced high temperatures. So we do not have some times of the year when the temperature is low, as you can see from the temperature curve, and other times of the year when the temperature is high. It is constant. And that brings us to our second characteristic. The average temperature is about 25 degrees Celsius. Average temperature is about 25 degrees Celsius. As we agreed the last lesson, we agreed that you'll always have a reference book, a textbook, an atlas, and a notebook to make summary notes. So, the other point, the other characteristic is that the annual range of temperature is low. The annual range of temperature is low. What are we saying? The diurnal range of temperature is the difference between the highest and the lowest temperature recorded in an year. For example, we can say in the month of January, the temperature that was recorded was 27 degrees Celsius. And then in the month of December, the highest temperature recorded was 25 degrees Celsius. You find the difference, that is you minus. You'll see that it is 2 degrees Celsius. This is our diurnal range of temperature. So the diurnal range of temperature is very important in helping us to identify the type of climatic zone that is being tested in an exam, whereby the examiner will highlight the characteristic of this climatic zone and ask you to identify which climatic zone is this. So, the diurnal range of temperature is very important to helping you as a candidate to identify the climatic zone that is being the equatorial climatic zone when it is being tested, because we have said that the annual range of temperature is very low. It is around 2 degrees Celsius to 3 degrees Celsius. That is the diurnal range of temperature. So very important in helping us to identify the equatorial climatic zone. The other characteristic is the total amount of rainfall, that is between 1700 degrees Celsius to 2250 degrees Celsius. That is the amount of rainfall. Amount of rainfall between 1700 millimeters to 2250 mm. From 1700 millimeters to 2250 millimeters. And lastly, there is no dry month in the climatic region, as we had already mentioned earlier. The other important bit is to identify the countries which experience this climatic zone. The first country is Ghana. You can see our Ghana here. You can see this is the prime meridian, 0 degrees. So we have countries like Ghana there. We also have Liberia, Benin, Togo. I believe you can refer from the location of these countries from your atlases as we identify them. It is very important you identify the location from your atlas. We also have countries like Madagascar. This is the largest island in Africa here, in Madagascar, which experiences the 3 climatic zone. So the equatorial climatic zone on the eastern, we have the western, the eastern, and the central part. Here on the western part, we have the savannah climatic zone. And then here at the central part, we have the humid subtropical. Then on the eastern side, we have the equatorial climate. Before I wind up on the equatorial climatic zone, it's important to emphasize the point that climate is the main factor that influences the vegetation of a given place. And therefore, the vegetation of the equatorial climatic zone is evergreen. It's a very common question in the exam. Why is it evergreen? It is because of the hot and wet climate that is experienced in the climatic zone throughout the year. Again, here to emphasize, the question, the examiner can test you on the kind of climate that is experienced on the western side of the largest island in Africa at the Indian Ocean. This is where you have the Indian Ocean. And this is the largest island, that is the Madagascar island. So the examiner can test the climate that is experienced on the western side or on the eastern side of the largest island, or even sometimes on the central part. The next climatic zone is the tropical savanna. the tropical savanna, the tropical climate. Tropical climate. Sometimes it is referred to as the savannah climatic zone. So this one is experienced it is found within the tropics. That is the first point. Found within the tropics. What are we saying? Here we have the equator. Then we also have the Tropic of Cancer here. These imaginary lines are going to help us to identify the tropics. They are going to help us to identify the tropics. This is the Tropic of Capricorn, which is 23.5 degrees south. So what we are saying is that the tropical climate, as the name suggests, lies between the tropics. It is within the tropics. This is what we mean by saying it is within the tropic. It is also the largest. It is the largest climatic region in Africa. It's the largest climatic region in Africa. So it is borders desert and equatorial climate. Borders desert and equatorial climate. What are we saying? Here we have the largest desert around this area. The largest desert in Africa, that is the Sahara Desert. And then we have the equatorial climate. This is the equatorial climate that we have already identified. So we are saying that the tropical climate is found at the borders of the desert. We also have other desert here. That is the Namib Desert, as we are going to discuss as we proceed with the lesson. So you can see, let me use a different mark pen so that you can identify the equatorial climatic zone. So this is the equatorial climatic zone, and we are saying that it is the largest climatic zone in Africa. The other characteristic is that it has two distinct wet seasons and two dry seasons. Has two distinct wet seasons and dry seasons. Let us demonstrate this characteristic using a graph representation. So we have this side, we have said, represents the months of the year. This side represents the amount of rainfall. So from 0 millimeters to around 2,000 millimeters. On this other end, we have the temperature in degrees Celsius. That is from 0 degrees, say, to around that degrees Celsius. So when we say that it has two distinct seasons, what are we saying? we have that one there, because mostly it experiences high rainfall in the months of March and September. So this represents the amount of rainfall. So what we have here is the two distinct wet season here. Yeah. And then we have the two distinct dry seasons as demonstrated here. And then the temperature curve. What is important here to note is that it has summers which are hot and wet, and winters which are cool and dry. Very important. So we can demonstrate the summers being hot and wet to explain in a better way. Let us have one distinct wet season on the graph. So what we are saying is that our graph representation will look like this. So this is the amount of rainfall. Then we are saying that summers are hot and wet. So we will have a temperature curve which looks like that. So that you can see here clearly that when the temperatures are high, we have a hot season. High temperature gives us a hot season. You can see in that month of the year when the temperatures were high, we have a wet, high amount of rainfall. We have high rainfall. That gives us a wet season. So high temperatures, we are saying hot. High rainfall, it's wet. So we have the curve here showing the temperature was high. And at the same month of the year, at the same time, you can see the amount of rainfall was quite high. Then the winters are cool and dry. What are we saying? When the temperature is low, here, as you can see, the amount of rainfall was low. And that leads us to the conclusion that summers are hot and wet, winters are cool and dry. Then the temperature range, that is between 10 degrees Celsius. The temperature range is 10 degrees Celsius. Temperature range is 10 degrees Celsius. When we refer to temperature range, we are referring to the difference between the highest temperature and the lowest temperature. A key thing that you need to identify is that In the equatorial climatic zone, we say the temperature, the diurnal range of temperature is very low. But on this one, the tropical climate, the temperature range is high, as we have said here. That is 10 degrees. Then other characteristics is that rainfall decreases as one moves away from the equator. That is point 7. Rainfall decreases as one moves away from the equator. Then, which are the areas that experience the savannah climatic zone? We have some parts of Zambia. We have some parts of Zimbabwe. Then we also have Malawi and East African plateaus. East African plateaus. So, the main economic activity in this region is livestock keeping. Point to note. Main economic activity at this zone is livestock keeping. So, which are the important points that you need to lay emphasis on as a candidate? It is to identify the summers and to remember the summers and the winters. We've said that summers are hot and wet, winters are cool and dry. So, again, this information can be represented in a graph format, and you are told to identify which climatic zone is this. So you are supposed to use the temperature curve to identify that when the temperature was high, the amount of rainfall was also high. That gives us a hot and wet climate in summer. And then when the temperatures were low, the amount of rainfall recorded was also low, that is dry. That gives us a cool and dry winter. We move on. Our next climatic zone is the Mediterranean climatic zone. The Mediterranean climatic zone. So, Mediterranean climatic zone. The Mediterranean climatic zone has only one rainy season. One rainy season. Then it has one dry season only. One dry season. Then the summers are hot and dry. Then the winters are cool and wet. These two form the most important characteristic of the Mediterranean climatic zone. So, when we talk about the Mediterranean climatic zone, which area or location is it experienced? We say that it is experienced in the tips of Africa. At the tips of Africa. At the tips of Africa. What are you saying? These are the tips or the edges. When we talk about tips, this is what we are referring to. So this Mediterranean climate is experienced around these areas. Let me use a different pen so that you can locate this Mediterranean climatic zone. So we are saying that the Mediterranean climate occurs or it's experienced at the tips of Africa. These are the tips of Africa. Then rainfall comes in December. Let us represent the summers and the winters on a graph. So on this side, as we have said, we have the months of the year. That is from January to December. On this other end, we have the amount of rainfall. That is 0 millimeters, around 2,000 millimeters. And on this end, we have the temperature in degrees Celsius. So from around 0 degrees there to around that degrees Celsius. So when we say that summers are hot and dry, what are we saying? This is the amount of rainfall. Then here we have the temperature curve. Like that. So when we say the summers are hot and dry, you can see the temperature here is very high using the temperature curve. And then at the same time of the year, the amount of rainfall recorded was very low. That is what we mean by dry. High temperature hot, low temperatures dry, as observed in the map, in the graph, sorry. Then we have the winters, which we are saying are cool and wet. So you can see when the amount of the temperature here was very low. This is the temperature curve. The temperature curve there. When it was very low, you can see the amount of rainfall was very high. That is cool. Temperatures low. We refer to that as cool. All right? Amount of rainfall high. refer to that as wet. That gives us winters which are cool and wet. Then we have the temperature range. Temperature range is 15 degrees. Temperature range is 15 degrees. That is the difference between the highest and the lowest temperature. So you find that the characteristic of summer and winter and the temperature range are very important in helping a candidate to identify the climatic zone that is being tested. And so those ones must be remembered and well understood. Then, very quickly, we move on to the next climatic zone. And the next climatic zone is the warm temperate. The warm temperate. Warm temperate. The warm temperate is mainly experienced in the high-veld region of South Africa. Mainly experienced in the high-veld region, the high-veld region of South Africa. So because of the area or the region where it is experienced, it is given another name, that is the high-veld climate. Because you find that these climatic zones, we are naming them depending on their locations. If it is the first one, the equatorial climate, that name has been drawn from the location at the equator between the 5 degrees north and the 5 degrees south. If it is the tropic climate or the savannah, it has been named so depending on its location, that is between the tropics. Then this warm temperate, we are saying it is also called the high-veld climate. It has two seasons. There's two seasons. That is, one, a wet and cool. Here's a wet and cool season. And then it has a hot and wet season. Hot and wet season. And then it has the cool and dry season. Using your atlas, dear learner, identify the following areas. Using your atlas, identify the following areas. Number 1, eastern parts of South Africa. Eastern parts of South Africa. Number 2, the Drakensberg Mountains. Number 3, Some parts are Swaziland. Number 4, Lesotho. So, are some parts of Mozambique. You realize that these are Southern African countries. These are Southern African countries. So, using your atlas, you'll identify these areas so that you can know where the warm temperate climate is experienced. The temperature range is 10 to 18 degrees. So the most important thing in the warm temperate, which is highly examinable, I've seen it in the exams and it is important you know this. It is the area where the warm temperate climate is experienced. That is mainly in the high-veld region of South Africa. Then we move on to our next climatic zone. That is the warm temperate eastern margin climate. Warm temperate eastern margin climate. So this one experience rainfall in both summer and winter season. It experiences rainfall in both summer and winter. You remember when we were starting, we began by saying only equatorial climate was experiencing hot and wet climate or temperature throughout the year. Others, like the savannah, have summers which are hot and wet and winters which are cool and dry. Mediterranean has summers which are hot and dry and winters which are cool and wet. But for this one, we have said that it experiences rainfall in both summer and winter seasons. Summers are hot and wet. Summers are hot and wet, while the winters are warm and they are warm, slightly warm. The winters are slightly warm. The other point is the temperature range, that is 20 degrees Celsius. Temperature range is 20 degrees Celsius. Then the areas where this one is experienced, so very quickly go to your atlases. We have the eastern coast of Mozambique. Areas where it's experienced. They include eastern coast of Mozambique, eastern coast of Mozambique. Then you also have the Neto region, and also the Eastern Cape province in South Africa? The Eastern Cape province in South Africa. As I am identifying and highlighting the places, you need to also identify these areas in your atlas. Very quickly, we move on to our next climatic zone. We say there are six. The desert climate. What is a desert, dear Lana? A desert is an extremely dry area that receives rainfall less than 200 millimeters. An extremely, there is the word extreme, dry area that receives rainfall below 250 mm. So you can see here we are referring to rainfall. Why? Because rainfall is the main element of weather. Okay? Climate is average weather. Weather is the daily changes observed in the atmosphere. And this weather has its elements, the ones that you already know. And the main element is rainfall, the amount of rainfall. The rainfall is the main element of weather. So we are saying that the desert climate is the one that is extremely dry. We have two types of desert. We have two main types of desert. Number one, we have the cold desert. And number two, we have the hot desert. It is important to note that the cold desert are characterized by very, very low temperatures, some as low as -6 degrees Celsius. But in Africa continent, our continent of Africa, here as you can see, it does not have a cold desert. Just for your information, examples of areas where you find the cold deserts, we have the Siberian desert in Russia, and the Antarctic and the Arctic region. The Antarctic and the Arctic region. But for Africa, we do not have a cold desert. We have the hot desert. So, characteristics of hot deserts. Characteristics of hot deserts. Number one is that little rainfall, less than 250 mm. Little rainfall. So anything with any climatic zone with a less than 250 mm rainfall, you know automatically that that is a desert. Then we have temperature during the day, 50 degrees. During the day is 50 degrees. And then at night, it is negative 6 degrees Celsius. The other point, it has hot and dry climate throughout the year. Another point is that the annual range of temperature is high. The annual range of temperature is high. That is the temperature, the difference between the highest and the lowest temperature recorded in a month, in a year. That is annual temperature. Then they have a scanty vegetation. Scanty vegetation. Areas that experience the desert vegetation, very quickly, we have the largest desert, that is the Sahara here. We have other deserts like the Namib Desert. Others, this Sahara Desert is in the countries of Northern Africa, that is the Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt. It's also important to note that when we are referring to the Mediterranean, just to take you back to what we have discussed, we have these countries of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, but Egypt, you can see the country of Egypt, it's an exclusion. Egypt does not experience the Mediterranean climate. But when we talk about desert climate, we are referring to all these countries of Northern Africa, the Sahara Desert, the largest desert, the Namib Desert, caused by the Mbeguela cold ocean current. Then other deserts like the Ogaden Desert. Ogaden Desert is between Ethiopia and Somalia. Here in Kenya, we have the Chelbi Desert, the Talo Desert, and the Kaisut Desert. So the deserts of Kenya, it's important we note them. We have the Chelbi, Kenya deserts, Chelbi Desert, Kaisut, and the Taro deserts. These are the three main deserts of Kenya. Then we have the Kalahari Desert. Kalahari Desert here, around here. There you have the Kalahari Desert. Very quickly, we move to the last climatic zone. The last climatic zone, this one, I'm going to be very brief. I'll just highlight the key points of the mountain climate. Here the key points is that one, it is influenced by the altitude. That is the height above sea level. And the peaks. The peaks at the tops of this mountain are characterized by snow because the temperature drops as you rise vertically. That is, the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. Having said that, I would like to look to answer to some of your questions. You can ask your question through the WhatsApp number that is showing on your screen. So, I'll be attending to your questions. As we have said, that climate is very important as it influences the climate, the economic activity of a place. Climate is very important. It influences the climatic economic of a place. So very quickly to your questions. Teacher, hi, how are you? I'm Purity from KUTV. Can you mention countries in Africa which are crossed by the prime meridian? So the prime meridian is the main line of longitude, or the main meridian. We have countries like Ghana here are the ones, the Ghana we emphasize because the prime meridian has passed through the capital city of that country. So in our lesson of the physical features, location, size and shape of Africa, we shall address the areas where the lines of the imaginary lines, that is the latitude and longitude, have passed through. Hi, I'm Fiona from Nairobi. Daisy from Kitale, which is the smallest climatic region in Africa. We have the mountain climatic region. Hi, teacher, I'm Shanice from Meru. Why does Meru receive more rainfall than Nanyuki? You find that Meru is on the windward side of the of the mountain, and it experiences winds that are warm and moist. But Nanyuki is on the leeward side, or the rain shadow part of the mountain, which experiences winds that are cool and dry. What is the temperature range of the Mediterranean? We have said that the temperature range of the Mediterranean is 10 to 15 degrees. Hi teacher, I'm Ernest. My question is, which climatic region experiences Macui's type of vegetation? That is the Mediterranean climatic region. Amesta from Kitui, which type of vegetation is found in most parts of Gabon? You find that Gabon is in the western part of Africa, and therefore the question is, we can say it is the Equatorial climatic zone. As I sum up, explain the term weather and climate. Climate, it's nearly from Nairobi. Weather is the daily changes observed in the atmosphere, and climate is the average weather condition of a given place that is recorded for a period of 30 to 35 years. I have not been able to attend to all of your questions because of time, and thank you for your questions. Let's see each other next Friday. Stay safe. Thank you. God bless you.